So today what I wanted to do is I wanted to feature an African American artist who she used color as a way to sort of overcome her feelings of sadness and stress and just overall feeling, seeing the world and how mean people are to one another and how bad they are to one another. She used color to try to brighten people's days, to sort of give them a little uplifting, an uplift, a little bit of a pick me up every day. So her name was Alma Thomas, and she was born in 1891, and she lived until 1978. But she was an African American expressionist painter and an art educator. That was even cooler. She was an art teacher. But she was best known for doing these beautiful color abstract paintings. She lived and worked primarily in Washington, D.C., but she was born in Columbus, Georgia in 1891. And you guys probably don't know, I don't know if you've learned it in history class, but in the United States at that time, slavery had just ended approximately 30 years ago. And when that happened, basically it was really difficult for African Americans to be moved into society, under equal circumstances. And so what they had was they instituted a system called segregation. Now, with segregation, what it was it was the practice of requiring African Americans and whites to have separate housing, separate schools, different services, different restaurants, different stores. They never really intermingled. They kept everybody separate. But Alma Thomas grew up in this type of environment in Georgia, and she loved art. And so as a child, she would sit around and she would make like puppets, and she'd make clay sculptures out of fabric, and doing clay, making sculptures out of clay and fabric, and making puppets, that sort of thing. And she just loved making art. Only problem was, is as an African American, she couldn't necessarily go to an art museum to look at what other artists are doing. She was still getting an education, just not as good. And so her parents moved to Washington, D.C., where the schools were much better for African Americans. I mean, as good as they could be for African Americans at that time. But while she was there, she, studied really hard, went to Howard University, and she ended up graduating as the first woman, and specifically, one of the first graduates and one of the first African American women to graduate from the School of Fine Arts. And after college, she still studied art, and after college, she became a kindergarten teacher for a couple of years, and then eventually became a junior high school art teacher, and remained one until her retirement in 1960. So she's making art she was making some art, but once she retired in 1960, that's when she started to dedicate her life to her art. And she took classes. She went back to university, got a master's degree in fine arts, and and really took to making her own style and making her own thing. And she was really influenced by abstract expressionism at the time. So pieces like this, like the Jackson Pollock piece, you have other artists that were abstract, like Picasso and that sort of thing. But she also took a big influence from Vasily Kandinsky. Now, I'm sure you guys have learned a lesson about him at some point, where he was the one that did the colorful circles, and the bright colors, and all the colors meant something emotionally for him. And she was really influenced by that. And so once she started making her own art, she took the idea of the abstract expressionism, using the brush strokes, but then also using the concentric circles that Kandinsky used. And so you get these beautiful pieces like this one here or this one here. And her paintings, really started to make her feel better. And she had this quote, and to me, this is just such an amazing quote. And I think this is going to be the inspiration for our art project. She said that the use of color in my paintings is of paramount importance to me. Through color, I have sought to concentrate on beauty and happiness in my paintings, rather than man's inhumanity to man. So, to sort of, because being an African American in America around that time, when she was in the 1950s and 60s, was always difficult, but it was a little bit more difficult because you started to have the civil rights movement happening, and there was a lot of violence against African Americans. And, she saw how mean people were to one another. And so she really tried to, brighten people's day by making these beautiful paintings. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be taking inspiration from her work, and we're going to use color to brighten everyone's day, because right now the world needs it. So what I want you to do is I want you to think of the most beautiful, bright colors you can possibly imagine, and I want you to paint them. And then what you're going to do is you're going to cut them up, and you're going to make a project that looks like one of Alma Thomas's paintings. So I'm going to be ending this talk soon, and then you're going to move on to the project, and I'm going to show you quickly what you're going to be doing. So enjoy. Okay, boys and girls. So for this project, like I said in the previous section, we're going to be talking about the artist Alma Thomas. And as I said, we are going to be studying how she uses color and how you're going to use color in this project. So what we're going to do is you're going to need a piece of paper. What I did was I used watercolors, and I just painted color sections down this piece of paper. The other thing you're going to need is a blank piece of paper. So if you remember what her artwork looks like, she would do things like circles, like Kandinsky, or she would do straight lines, whatever you want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do circles, concentric circles. So which means that I'm going to draw a circle here, and then I'm going to draw another circle. These don't have to be perfect because we're going to be gluing colors over the top of this. So, and then do another circle. So I have 3 circles here. Set this aside. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to cut this up. So the easiest thing to do here is just, and the cutting does not have to be perfect either, just have to do, just a decent job of getting the shapes and sizes of the paper different. Now, we don't want to have, if you're using a small piece of paper like I am right now, you don't want to have large pieces, because really it's only going to take you like 20 pieces of paper to fill up the whole thing. So you want to try to avoid that. So what we want to do is we want to cut a piece like this, and then you're going to make it smaller, like this, and then cut it again like this. So I want to have pieces that are this big. Okay, so I'll do some yellow here, and I'll cut up some red. And now this is the easy part, and this is one where I don't think you guys will have any problem with. You know how I normally talk about I want you to fill up all the spaces and not leave any blank white spaces? Here I don't mind if you have blank white spaces, because if you remember what her work looked like, it looked like brush strokes over the top, which it was. I mean, her pieces were done with paint. We're going to do it with paper. It's much easier, and most of you guys don't have the type of paint that is needed to make it look like that anyway. So that's why we're going to use paper. All right, so I have my circles here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking my glue stick, and I'm going to fill in my center circle. Then what I'll do is I will start gluing these little triangles, these little pieces of yellow paper, like this, and just go in a circle. And you can even fill in the circle like this. I'll cut some more up. We'll just glue these on. Now you want to try to get it nice and flat, the best that you possibly can. Okay? So you can cut them as small or as large as you want. They don't have to be the same size. None of that really matters. So we want to do those. You want to use bright colors to sort of express our mood type of feeling. I mean, if you remember what we talked about with her work was she used color to brighten up everybody's lives that were, because the world was such, a difficult place for an African American growing up in America during that time. Well, even by today's standards, it's kind of tough. So what she's doing is she's using color. When you look at a piece, you feel better, and that's what she wants. Okay, so now that one's done, what we're going to do is we'll start with the next circle. So I'm just going to do, the circle is a little bit larger, so what I'm going to do is I am going to simply just do small sections at a time. Let's cut up these squares. Now, when you're going in a certain direction, though, yes, it does help to keep these going in the same direction, because what she did was she used brush strokes to sort of show movement. So when you're getting to the outer circles like this, you want to kind of have these pieces facing the same direction. So like this. Now, I'm not going to go through and finish this whole thing, but you get the idea. So you're just going to go in a circle around here, then pick another color, do another circle here, and then another circle here. Then when you're done, you're done. So, and then post your work up on Seesaw. I'd love to see it. And really cool thing right now is I have a friend who runs, who does a lot of work with the Phillips Collection in Washington, D.C., and they're doing a show on Alma Thomas's artwork. And if you guys do some really cool pieces, I'll be able to send it to her, and she can show it to her colleagues, and maybe even do organize a workshop at her museum where she works. So it'd be great if you guys could do a really, really good job today and send me your work. I would love to see it. And good luck and have fun. Take care, guys.